What's up, guys? My name is Fari, and I build systems that remove bottlenecks within businesses. And I've been documenting my builds since the 1st of June 2025, going all the way up to the 1st of June 2026. And in today's video, I'm going to be going through the speed of decision making and as well as, the cost of also zooming in and zooming out, and how I'm actively learning through both of these. So, one of the most important things that I've realized on a day to day that ultimately compounds has been the speed of decision making. How am I able to basically not delay the decisions that I need to make on a day to day? Because those decisions, the quicker I can make them, the more steps I can take to, get forward in terms of what it is that I'm doing. And I never really fully understood the power of this until I changed to start making decisions quickly. Like, hey, something needs to get done. Let me do it now. Let me not stall it or just, say, hey, I'm going to do it into the future or later on, but rather I'm going to do it right there and then. And simply through that, it creates that intensity that, hey, you're building this thing and you're acting fast on it. And that also increases the speed of execution in terms of just getting things done. And for some weird reason, every time I've done that, the world has somewhat matched my energy, and it's something that I've never fully realized until I started making decisions quick. Because once you start doing that, then everything else around you starts moving as quickly as the speed of your decisions ultimately goes. And like the saying goes, that everything is relative to what you're doing. I think this is ultimately true, that each and every single day, the faster and more intent that you're moving in terms of what you're building, the world somewhat starts to move in the same manner. And it's up to you, because it all starts with you. It all starts with what's in your mind and what's in your vision as well, in terms of how you want to build the future. And I had this saying, or I read this thing on Twitter some time ago, where it was like, hey, we only have so much time to live on this planet, so why not make decisions fast and just build things quickly while we have this opportunity or this moment in the sun, I like to say, when we can ultimately just go for what it is that we're ultimately wanting to build, and just move with intent and speed, and making decisions swiftly and quickly, such so that the world starts to move around us, because we have such limited time to build so many things, or to build one thing, depending on what it is that you ultimately want to, your definite chief aim to be. But ultimately, building one thing, you need to make sure that you're moving as quickly as you possibly can, but also making sure that you're moving with intent. And this is something that I've had to realize in times where I felt things to be slow. And I'm just one of those people that when things start to feel slow, it feels like nothing is actively moving forward. And then I realized that all of this simply just comes from me. Am I making the decision today to move with intent and speed and make decisions quickly, such so that the world starts to curve around me? And I've realized that in times where I've somewhat increased, or I've had latency in terms of my decision making, I've ultimately been down the road of things slowing down, and that ultimately making me feel like, hey, I'm not actively getting things done. I'm not doing anything, simply because I'm not moving with that same speed and intensity that I possibly could be moving. And it all starts from me. It all starts from the person that is building this vision and building whatever it is that you're wanting to build out of your life. It all starts from me, and understanding that and taking accountability for that ultimately allows me to then realize that I need to make sure that I'm moving with intent and speed in terms of what it is that I'm actively doing as well. And that also ties into zooming in and zooming out, which is something that I am actively learning at this point in time. I'm by no means the best at this, by far, but it's something that I've been learning each and every single day, is solely just understanding in periods of times when to zoom in and when to zoom out, and striking that balance. Because for me, it's always been in deep operator mode. When I'm super locked in terms of just building, it's sometimes super difficult to then have to zoom out, and finding that balance of zooming in, zooming out as well, simply because you realize that some of the things that you're ultimately able to build, that 10x what you've been doing while you zoomed in ultimately comes as a result of zooming out and looking at the big picture and saying, hey, is what I'm doing actively moving things forward, or what the things that I have been doing, have they actively been moving things forward? And ultimately understanding that, you need to strike this balance in terms of being able to zoom in from deep operator mode to zooming out and saying, hey, is what I'm doing actively making sense? Is it pushing me towards my end goal? And how is it actively building my different layers, basically the execution layer, the knowledge layer? How is that ultimately feeding into everything that I'm doing on a day-to-day? And solely just understanding that each and every single day I need to be able to strike the balance in terms of when to zoom in and when to zoom out, because each of them create their own leverages, or they add different leverages or different modes in terms of the different leverage layers, in terms of execution and also vision layers as well. And solely just understanding that each and every single day, it's all about understanding that there are times where you have to go in super deep builder mode, but also be able to zoom in and zoom out and strike that balance. And that is something that I've been learning a lot recently, in terms of really trying to find and strike that balance in terms of zooming in and zooming out, and creating leverage through that. Because I have found that in times where I've zoomed in way too much, is times where I've missed a couple things that, had I zoomed out, I could have 10x or multiplied what it is that I was doing simply by just zooming out. And that ultimately means that you're just taking an inventory, and you're able to then log what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day, such so that you can understand the things that you're doing on a day-to-day. Are they actively compounding into the things that you're building into the future, or are they not playing into your strengths as well? And I think that is one of the things that I solely just want to focus a lot more on in terms of building. And some of the things that I've made mistakes on countless of times, in terms of just understanding when to zoom in and zoom out, and also being able to leverage both of those in certain periods and times. But I guess just from saying this, and this is just an idea that I've had, which is it ultimately comes as a result of which season you are in, and understanding how to basically zoom in, so that you understand and you're ultimately doing the things that you need to do, but also at the same time also being able to zoom out, such so that you can also build as well, and also come up with different ideas. Because it's so easy to zoom in so much and also zoom out so much, that you ultimately realize that you're not compounding what you're doing. And striking that balance is something that I ultimately just want to make sure that I'm focusing a lot more on. And each and every single day is always a learning lesson. It's always, how can I learn, and how can I add towards these different layers that are within what it is that I'm doing? Is it the execution layer that I'm ultimately adding to? Is it the knowledge layer? Is it ultimately the production layer? How am I ultimately adding and contributing to these different layers on a day-to-day, such so that I'm moving the needle forward, and also making sure that we're getting to the grand vision of what it is that we're doing, and realizing that the more reps we ultimately do get in, the better we become on a day-to-day. And it's not instantaneous, which I wish it was sometimes, that hey, the things are ultimately just gonna click into place. Of course it takes time, it takes reps, but I believe that through that time and those reps, you ultimately are able to build the version of yourself that ultimately becomes this person that's able to then zoom in and then zoom out, and also make decisions quickly. Because the quicker you make the decisions, somewhat the world just starts to move around you, and everything starts moving at the same velocity that you're getting things done. And that sheer level of intensity also needs to somewhat, in my personal belief at this point in time, needs to also just be counterbalanced by also being able to zoom out. And that balance is something that I'm continuously learning on a day-to-day through many mistakes that I'm making. But each and every single day, it's all about being able to become better, and also play into that knowledge, that Fari OS that I've spoken about in a previous video. Because then I'm constantly just logging the decisions that I'm making on a day-to-day, day, such so that I'm not losing those lessons as well. Because it's so easy to lose these lessons just simply saying, hey, that's okay. I'm not going to log this decisions. I'm not going to track the inputs that I'm putting in, and I'm not going to track the processes that ultimately result into the outputs, but I'm just going to do things and I'm just going to let things flow. It's more so, how can I add and incorporate more structure such so that it makes it inevitable for me to make decisions quickly, such so that even if I get them wrong, the most important thing is that I'm moving forward, that I'm outputting to the point where I'm then able to zoom in and also zoom out, without breaking the machine as well, which I believe that we're going to get to, super soon into the future. But it ultimately comes from having those reps on a day to day. And I know for a fact that each and every single day, we're just going to keep constantly adding towards these different layers and getting closer and closer to perfecting it, if you will, and just chasing, never ending learning and just learning each and every single day. And through that, I know we're going to get one step closer to building, Killer Chaos OS, or just building the next generation of backend systems and infrastructure. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my newsletter. Is the first link in the description. And if you want to connect with me, the other links are also in the description just below that. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.